What is up, everybody? Ed Gow Jr. here from Dad Central, joined by my partner in good crime, True Soul. And what's going on?
Hi, Ed. It's the usual. Looking forward to another great conversation.
Yes, and if you haven't checked us out before, you're at the right place. It's called the Dad Central Show, and it is sponsored by Dove Men Care. And the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man, because when a man cares for himself and others, there's positive impact. So we've been going on a good journey, and it only gets better and better.
Absolutely. It does get better and better because we have these conversations with men or dads or people who have some influence, and they share so much wisdom. I just got a message the other day from someone who's been listening to the show, and they talked about the chat with Jack Armstrong, and he said it was like having an hour-long conversation with a mentor. And so Jack's background as a coach was, I think, probably foundational to us having that. But I think we're blessed to have another coach on today, too. So it should be another fantastic conversation.
Absolutely. So let's get it. I met this gentleman digitally during the pandemic. Via a social media app called Clubhouse. And I just want to reflect a little bit on during the pandemic. I've shared with many people, it was one of the great opportunities for the growth of fathers in interacting with each other, fathers and those who love them interacting with each other. And I had the opportunity and the pleasure to meet this young gentleman via Clubhouse. We were a member of a Clubhouse club, and we chatted. And he told me, and he's shown me, his passion for fathers to be better, fathers and their families to be better. And I bugged him a little bit, and then I sort of pulled it back. Said the other day, I said, you know what, we need you on. We just need you on because you have he has a lot of value when it comes to fatherhood. So I like to say, welcome to the Dad Central Show. Bryan Ward is going to be joining us right now. Bryan Ward, what's going on?
How are you guys doing? So great to be here. I'm honored. And you didn't bug me. But when you ever mentioned to me about coming on, I mean, that made my day. I've been waiting for it. I've been dreaming about it. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, just to be honest, when I said to Bryan, would you like to be on the show? He goes, yes. That's what he said. Yes. So we're really happy to have you on. It's long overdue, but nothing happens unless it's the right time. And I think this is a great time in your journey about helping dads and fathers around the world, and our journey about helping dads around the world, thanks to Dove Men Plus Care, by the way. And we're looking forward to having a great conversation today with you. So I'll open up I'll open up the conversation, and Drew will come in because I know Drew's got questions too. So let's start it off by asking you, what was your life growing up? And if you want to share about about your relationship with your dad, because I know you had on your show a little while back your dad on. So please share with us.
Yeah, well, again, thank you guys both for having me on. I really appreciate it. But for me, life was pretty simple as a kid. I played sports, I did the normal things that kids do. However, I didn't have very involved parents. And my parents they're both married still to this day, just celebrated 50 years of marriage. So they're both married still to this day. However, they couldn't afford to provide the involvement that they needed to as parents, because they were working, blue collar jobs, and they worked a lot. My mom actually worked 2 jobs. She had a day job, and then she had a nighttime job where she had her own janitorial service company. So it was really me just kind of growing up with them in the house, but no real involvement. I remember as a kid going to sports, my practices or games with my friends' parents, because I didn't have rides to get to these practices or games. I can count on one hand how many times my parents were actually able to come to a game of mine as a child. And that impacted me, because as children, when we're playing in these extracurricular activities or playing in sports, they don't care about all the people in the stands. They want to see their parents. They want to see their family. And so that did impact me as a child. Now, my parents were actively involved with me in the house. My parents always told me they loved me. Every single day I got an I love you from them. They were concerned or I guess on top of me for grades, keeping my grades up. Those kind of things, teaching me right from wrong, teaching me valuable work ethic lessons, those kind of things they did right. However, the involvement outside of the home was just not there. And as I said, that impacted me as a child. And it was, I think it's probably because of that, the way that I grew up there is probably why I am the way I am with my boys, or where I was when they were growing up. So, my life was simple, easy. I worked. My dad wanted me to always have a job. So, at the age of 11, I got a paper out. If you guys can remember those, I got a paper out in my small town of 1,500 people. It was me and my best friend. We were the only two guys in town that had a paper route. So I had one half of the town. He had the other half. And we used to have competitions and stuff with each other. But I always had a paper route up until I was able to drive. And then when I was able to drive, I got jobs. And I had jobs, through high school. So, my life was pretty standard for a kid.
Cool. Drew, do you want to add anything?
Well, can you talk a little bit more about the extracurricular involvement and what that would have meant for you if they were to be involved?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I had, my parents didn't go to parent-teacher conferences. We didn't go to school open houses, things like that. If I was involved in some sort of extracurricular activity and they did show up, it was a happy moment, but a shocking moment. My parents came to one of my water polo matches, and it was probably the best game that I ever played because I was trying to please them. As children, we want to make our parents happy. We want to make our parents happy with the things that we're doing, right? So when they came to that game, it was probably, one of the greatest games I had. So, it's one of those things where as children, we're so dying for their attention that when they did show up, it was like, okay, now I can really show them what I really can do. Unfortunately, with their jobs, they just couldn't be there at every event. And then, I've had some tough times too. I participated. This is something that, I still get choked up about today, but this is something that really hit home for me as a kid. I was a wrestler in high school, and I got asked by the coach to participate in a tournament that was coming up for the weekend. And my parents were able to go, which I was really excited about. They'd get to see me wrestle for the first time. And the first match I had, I won. And then there was about a 2-hour window before my second match. And my parents didn't want to stay. And I had no way home. So my dad made me leave. He said, "We need to go. I'm tired of sitting here. Let's go." And I told him, I said, "Dad, I have another match. I can't just leave." He goes, "Just tell your coach you have something come up and you have to take off." And he forced me to leave. And it was, it's devastating as a kid because there I was trying to make them happy and doing, seeing them there, which was rare to begin with, but to ask me to leave was, troublesome. So that was a pretty tough moment. And I still remember it to this day. That was when I was very young in high school.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I can see it and I can hear it in your voice, the level of feeling that's part of that experience for you. So you're a father. You've got, I think, 2 grown boys now. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so what did that mean for you then as you entered fatherhood and then became, their dad, probably involved in sports or some other involvement? So talk a little bit about what that experience meant for you as a dad.
Yes. Well, I think that experience led me to the dad that I am today. And it's, when I became a dad, it's obviously one of the greatest moments of my life is becoming a dad. But I knew very young that I wanted to be a dad and that I was going to be an involved dad. I knew that very young. And so probably because of the way I was raised, but I knew that very young. So for my boys, there wasn't a doubt in the world that I wasn't going to be there at everything that I could be there for them, participate in. So that, I don't know if it was that particular event or just the way I was raised, but that's what's led me to the dad that I was or am today.
So Bryan, you said you wanted to become a dad. Was there anything afraid? Like, were you afraid about anything becoming a dad? Because you sounded like you wanted to be it, but was there any, like when you had your first child, was there a moment?
Yeah, so I say I wanted to be a dad, but I wasn't in any rush. Okay, I got out of high school and went right into the military. I went right into the Marine Corps, and so I spent 4 years in the Marines. And it was towards the later part of my career in the military that I met my wife. And I didn't know how soon we were going to have kids, but I knew she wanted to have kids. And yes, when my first son was born, there was that fear of, okay, I'm responsible now, and I say that our kids are just they're not really our kids; they're the Lord's kids, and He's loaned them to us to raise for Him. And so I carried that responsibility when the day my first son was born. And it's funny, when he was born, the fear of failure seeps into your head. Like, I don't want to mess this up. I'm responsible for this human being, and I don't want to mess this thing up. And as a dad, the only thing you really have to go off of are the experiences you've had in your life, the people that are around you, and the things maybe that you've picked up through reading or whatnot. So I knew as a dad that I'm probably going to make mistakes, but I didn't want to mess this thing up. So yes, to answer your question, there was a fear of that.
Well, it's interesting, and that has come up in many of our conversations with our dads, is that a number of saying, I didn't want to mess this thing up. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Drew?
I was going to say the same thing. I remember doing a local workshop for dads and just asking some questions of the dad who was in the audience. And, he half jokingly says, well, I don't want to screw my kid up. Trevor Linden talked about, that was kind of our title of it, how not to screw your kid up. And so it's interesting that dads really face that type of fear or concern, whether their past experience had a great dad or whether their past experience maybe had some moments that weren't. And so what did you do then, Bryan, to ensure that you didn't screw it up? Talk to us about some of maybe one or two key things that helped you in the process of being a good dad.
Well, it's a couple of those things that I named. I had the right people around me. So my father-in-law at the time was a phenomenal dad, and I had very close relationships with other men who were dads. And I took the advice and guidance of them. And also I took the struggles that I went through with the experiences of my own father and kind of learned from both sides of it to learn kind of what to do. Now, I mean, I'm not here saying that I'm this perfect dad, because I'm not. I make mistakes all the time. I probably make mistakes every day, my kids will tell you. But so yeah, I'm going to mess it up. But the fact that my boys are now 23 and about to be 21, and their work ethic, their passion, their drive, their kind, they have all the benefits that I would hope that they would have when they were babies, that they would grow into, is just a testament, not only to me, but to their mom, right? The two of us as partners on this parenthood journey together to try to raise these two boys. I think we've done pretty okay.
Okay, good stuff. One of the things, and I know you're a corporate guy, because I chat with Bryan offline, and I'd say at least half the time he's in shirt and tie. So I've always wanted to ask you this: how do you balance the dad life, the family life, the career life? He's on a regime. He has his water, so we keep him accountable. He loves drinking his water. How do you balance, or how do you maintain? I don't know about balance. How do you maintain all those areas of your life?
Let's also remember he's the host of the Dad Up podcast.
Exactly.
That's no small thing to add on to all those additional things. So talk to us about that.
Right. Yeah. How do I balance it all, man? It's one of those things I tell dads, people that I talk to that ask me that question all the time. You have to, if you're passionate about something, you just have to do it. Don't waste time in thinking about it, put too much thought into it. Just do it. I'll give you an example. I had a I had a situation come up that was a few years back. I want to say maybe 7 years ago or so, where my wife had an issue where she had lost eyesight in her eyes due to her. She's a type 1 diabetic, and due to her what is called diabetic retinopathy, she actually lost vision in her eyes. And at the time, we were both driving, and I was coaching sports and working. And at the time when that happened, there was no more of her involvement with the driving, number one, and then other things like taking care of the finances in the home, grocery shopping, things like that. How was I going to be able to not only tackle being at a job, working in my corporate life, but being a coach and trying to manage the house as well? And I didn't really think too much about it. I knew that it had to be done. I knew that if it didn't get done, bad things could happen. Things could really go sideways if it didn't happen. I just had to jump in and do it. And that's the way I take things in life. If there's things that are struggles or things that I'm facing coming up in front of me, the better I am at just tackling it and doing it without really thinking about it, the more successful I'll be and the more things will get accomplished. The second thing is I'm a big proponent of scheduling, and I talk a lot about it on my show, but scheduling your days. It could be something as simple as a podcast. It could be something as simple as a 10-minute meeting, but I have a very strict schedule that I stick by, and that includes family time. Now, my boys are both grown. One of them's, working in sales and in corporate, and he's, graduated from college and all that. My other son's about to be a junior in college. But that includes scheduling family time, scheduling time with them. I schedule time with my boys. I schedule time with my wife, even date nights. We plan that stuff. That stuff's all on the books. And my wife and I, every Sunday evening, we will chat about the upcoming week, because things happen, things come up, things get thrown into the mix at last minute. That's okay. But on Sunday evenings, we chat about, what do you have going on this week? What do I have going on this week? And then we kind of put our schedules together so that way it all works out. So scheduling's been a lifesaver for me. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that do it. But if you schedule family time and it's a non-negotiable, then it will get done and family time will get done. The podcast for me, I do my interviews either early in the morning, in the evening, or on the weekends. And then I have somebody outside, an editor that I pay to do all my editing for me. So all I have to do is post stuff. I do the interviews when I do them, and then I post stuff. So it's pretty simple as far as that side of things goes. But, working out in the morning, I get up early. My wife gets up early. She works out and I go work out. So all that stuff's actually pretty simple because it's on the schedule and it's planned.
Nice. You, up until recently, were a coach.
Yeah.
And have been coaching for many, many, many years. So I'd love if you could share with our audience how coaching has helped you in your fatherhood journey.
Oh man, gosh, I miss coaching. I miss coaching tremendously. I coached for 20 years, various sports. For the last 5 years, I coached high school basketball. And it's something that I really miss. I knew it was time for me to kind of, as they say, hang up the whistle, because I wanted more time at home. Really, I did it selfishly. I wanted more time with my wife because she was what they call a coach's widow, where I was, going to work every day. And then I would leave the office and go straight to practice or games. And I wasn't home until 10 o'clock at night, every single night. And that was a regular routine for the last 5 years since I've been coaching high school. So I knew it was time for me to kind of step aside, and it was a good decision that I made. I miss it, but it was a good decision, and it's allowed me more free time with my wife and my family and being home. But balancing, having the impact that I've had in these young men's lives has been huge for me, because there are a lot of players that I have coached, thousands that I've coached over the years, that are growing up the same way I did, where their parents are working. They can't afford to leave work to sometimes being late to practices to pick up their child. but they can't afford to leave work to come to a game. There have been many, many, many players of parents that I have, parents of players that I have never met
Wow.
because they just couldn't come. And as I was saying earlier, the one thing that the kids look for when they're playing in a sport, when they look in the stands, is they don't want to see all these other fans. They want to see their family. And so the fact that I can be there as a coach, helping them learn a sport, teaching them how to play a sport, but also being like that father figure or that father mentor in their lives is probably the greatest reward I have ever done besides being a father to my boys. And I'll take it a step further. I've had players that have since grown, they're grown men now, have since graduated college, that have reached out to me, reminding me that I coached them and what an impact I was on their lives. I had a player that just shortly before the pandemic, he had graduated high school, and just a few months before the pandemic had reached out to me and said, and this is a young man who did not have a father figure in his life, who was raised by his mom, and his mom works a couple of jobs. And he said, I'm feeling lost. I don't know the direction of my life. Now, this is a young man that's graduated high school now. Like, he's grown. You're a grown adult. It's time for you to put your big boy pants on and get to work, or find something that you want to do that you're passionate about. But he was lost. He was struggling, and he didn't know what direction he would go. And he sent me a text one day out of the blue and asked if we could meet, and told me why he wanted to meet. And I said, I will absolutely be happy to do that, but I'm gonna hold you accountable to the things I'm going to tell you. And I want you to write some passion of yours, some passions that you have in your life. I want you to write some goals that you want to accomplish. I want you to write all that stuff down so that we could discuss it in our meeting. And we had lunch together, and I bought him lunch, and we sat there for probably a good 2 hours and talked about his life and the direction he wants to go and the things he wants to do and the things he wants to accomplish. I helped him out redefining his goals. I helped him out structuring his goals. I helped him with giving him books that he should be starting to read and look into. And within 6 months, he was playing college football. So it's one of those things where if I have that kind of an impact on players when they're playing for me on a team, and that carries them on into being productive young men or women, I've coached girls too, then my job's been great, been success. So coaching is not only just about being a coach and yelling and screaming at the players or cheering for them when they do well. It's about being a role model for them and being somebody that they can look up to, because they may not have that situation going on for them at home. And I see too many coaches that just are all about winning and just want to do whatever they have to do to win. And they don't care the damage that they may be doing to young players with the way that they're treated. So for me as a coach, I'm a father figure to them, and I've always looked at it that way. So
thanks for sharing that. I know Drew was very involved in sports when he was younger. He's still young when he was younger. So I don't know, Drew, if there's anything you want to add on to that or ask any more questions in regards to Bryan's journey as a coach.
I can add on because I think it's so important what Bryan just shared. The ability to be a positive role model, even if you're not a direct father or a biological or stepfather. My coaches did play pivotal roles in my life, but I also did have a stepdad who came into my life when I was 10, who also played a critical role. But it just means that father figures still are very important in the lives of children at those critical moments, or just when you can be available to a child who's growing when they need it. And so I'm thankful for coaches like Bryan, or like the coaches that I had growing up, the men who are available for the student athletes or just the athletes that they're coaching, and helping provide that father-like influence at a time when they need it. So it's a very powerful story, and I'm very much appreciated, Bryan, that you still show that or deliver that for the athletes who you worked with.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a ton of stories, but I just recently had a situation come up that's happened over the last few years. But I had a player that I had coached since he was a little kid, all the way up through high school, and his parents went through a divorce, and he didn't have a real good relationship with his father when they divorced, and he looked at me as that kind of that father figure. So he was asking me, he was, constantly texting me about advice, guidance, things like that. I sat with him in the car when he was learning how to drive. I was trying to teach him how to drive. When he got to a point where he wanted to buy his very first car, I spent the whole day driving to different dealerships to kind of look at different cars with him. And that young man is now, he's very successful in the things that he's doing. He's in the video and photography business. He's very successful in that. He's now married. My wife and I got to attend his wedding of his wife. Even before his wedding, I sat down with he and at the time, his fiance, and had a chat with them about marriage and what it means to be married and the commitment that they're going to be making to each other. And I had breakfast with the two of them and talked to them about those things. So those kind of things happened in my life because of the fact that I was a coach for these young men. So that's just another example.
I just want to complete this part of the journey today, in that how have all those athletic experiences helped Bryan Ward ... father?
Oh, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is learning patience. Learning patience, because we're tested in so many ways as dads. We are tested so many ways as coaches, and learning to be patient, not only with the players that you're coaching, but also with your own kids. It's one of the biggest struggles that I've faced as a dad is learning to have the patience in dealing with various situations or circumstances that come up, whether it's in a game, in a practice, a player that's not behaving the way he should, or my own kids that are doing something wrong or right that I need to kind of have patience for. So patience has been the hugest thing that I have learned, not only as a coach, but as a father.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Bryan. I want to talk a little bit about the Dad Up podcast. And you've been doing it for a while now. So can you tell me the story? How did you decide that you were going to become a podcast host? And what was the type of impact you're looking to have with your show?
Yes. Thank you for asking. The podcast is going to be this October, November will be 3 years running. And it's been a lot of fun. But how it started, that's an interesting story, because my boys at the time when I started it, my older son was in college. My younger son was a senior in high school. And I was getting to a point where I knew that my younger son was going to graduate high school, go off to college. And then I was going to be, essentially, my wife and I were going to be empty nesters. And I was looking forward to that part of it, enjoying each other again and just having the peace of being around each other and enjoying our lives. But a part of me was going to be missing. And that was having these two young men in my house, having to raise them and guide them and provide them with the things that they needed to be successful. So I felt like my fatherhood journey was coming to an end when my youngest son graduated high school. And that scared me. It really did. I say that it was like an emptiness in my heart. It was like a loneliness that I was going to be feeling, even though I was looking forward to being an empty nester. I was still going to be missing that. And so I started reaching out to a couple of different people, one of them being my brother-in-law. And I talked to him. I sat down at his house in Laguna and shared kind of my story and what I was feeling. And he said, of all the things that I know about you, the one thing that I know you are phenomenal at is being a dad. And maybe you should consider talking to other dads in the form of a podcast, doing a podcast where you're sharing stories and ideas with other dads to hopefully inspire some dads out there. And I thought that was an interesting concept. I had listened to podcasts, didn't really know a whole lot about them, but I shared what he had shared with me, shared it with my wife, and she said, "Oh my gosh, that would be great. You'd be good at it." So started doing some research, and a month or so later, the podcast was up and running. The first almost 2 years was essentially just audio podcasts. I've been going with video now for about the last 10 months. So now it's audio and video. But my very first guest was Dr. Vibe, you know him, was Ron Haywood. So one of the guys that I coached in high school ball with, he was my very first interview. So it's been quite a journey. I've interviewed celebrities. I've interviewed entrepreneurs. I've interviewed authors, pastors, people from all different careers. It's been quite a journey. And even last year, I was featured on CNN. CNN had reached out to me that I thought was a joke. CNN had reached out to me via email and said, "Hey, we're doing a Father's Day special. We came across your podcast and we'd love to interview you." And I was hesitant to respond. I actually took about a week before I responded because I wasn't sure if it was spam or not. So I decided to respond, and luckily I did because, I got interviewed by a young man on CNN. It's a kind of a side network called HLN for their Father's Day special, and it was a little 4-minute segment that I was on. So I was on TV, so it was cool that I was able to tell family and friends about it. They were able to watch it live, so it was really, really a neat experience.
What brings you the most joy doing the Dad Up podcasts?
Well, it's interesting. The thing that brings me the most joy about it is meeting people. For me, just being able, especially through the pandemic. I mean, if you think about it, my podcast started before the pandemic, but we had the pandemic and we really couldn't meet in person. So there's been all these different things like Zoom and things like that have really popped up because of the pandemic. And it's really given me an opportunity to expand my podcast to more people outside of the country. And just meeting these different people has been probably the most rewarding. Just getting to build relationships with people that I never thought in a million years that I would build relationships with. So that's been the biggest part of it.
Stuff. Drew?
Yeah, thank you for that, Bryan. One of the things that we were talking about, and I really hope you can share a little bit more about now, relates to this idea of building relationships, but also finding supportive community to just be available to you. And so one of the things that you were sharing before was that you have a personal board of directors. And so that piqued my curiosity. It's something that I'm familiar with by John Maxwell, who's a mentor of mine and part of the Maxwell Leadership Program. And so he talks about the value of having, this personal board of advisors to help support you and hold you accountable, those types of things. So can you talk to us about your personal board of directors, how it came to be, and what value that brings to you as a dad, as a man, as a husband, and just maybe even as a podcast host or however it's supporting you?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, the board of directors, it has been going now. This is the second year it's been running. It's been a lot of fun, but I was looking for leadership in my life, in all areas of my life, when it comes to my family, my finances, my faith, my brand, all those different areas. I was looking for some sort of leadership that I could lean on for support. Now we have support through, people through social media and stuff like that, commenting and stuff on your posts. That's not real support. I wanted guys that I could actually meet with. And I thought, for professional athletes, for young athletes, they have coaches that train them. If you go to the gym and you want to hire a trainer, now your trainer is your coach to help you get into shape and build that side of your life. For companies, they have a board of directors that helps keep the company afloat, that makes decisions in order to keep that company moving forward. And I thought, why can't we as people have our own personal board of directors that report to us to help us in various aspects or various areas of our lives? And so I didn't know about, I know about John Maxwell, but I didn't know he had a similar idea. But I came up with the idea of having this personal board of directors. And it was I call it my man up tribe. And there's a reason behind that instead of dad up tribe. I call it my man up tribe, but there's a purpose. So I started kind of toying with the idea and thinking about it. And I started building a list of the guys that I respected, admired, who are successful in the things that they do, that I knew I could gain value from. And I had a list of probably, I think about 15 to 20 guys. And I started narrowing it down. Okay, he's not going to work for this reason or that reason. I asked a couple others that said they had too much on their plate to do it. And it got down to these 8 men that I reached out to and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. This is how it's going to be structured. This is what I'm expecting from you. And this is what you're going to get from me. Are you interested? And luckily, all those 8 said yes. And so we meet as a board of directors. We meet once every other month. And Dr. Vibe is one of my board of directors that I look up to and admire and appreciate and respect. And we meet every other month, and we meet via Zoom. And I actually had each of my board of directors, and Dr. Vibe can attest to this, but I had each of my board of directors sign a contract that I wrote, the values that they would bring to me and the things that they were responsible for to me and the things that I would do for them. And they had to agree to it, and they signed it and committed to 1 year on that contract. And then I gave them a copy, and I kept a copy. And it's been going strong ever since. Like I said, we meet once every other month, typically for about an hour. Sometimes it goes longer, but typically for about an hour. And we talk about the things that I have done or have gone on in my life since we last met. We talk about those areas. Any things that I'm struggling with or areas in my life that I'm struggling with, we talk about those things. And then we also talk about things I need to work on moving forward before the next meeting. So we go through all those areas. And one of the first things I start off with is family. I talk about my family. This is what's gone on with our lives in my household for the last month and a half. And if there's anything that's come up or anything that's changed or anything I need guidance on, they provide that. But they're a great group of guys. And luckily, they have decided to stay on for a whole nother year. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's been rewarding, and it's allowed me to really get to know these guys on a more personal level. So if you do not have a personal board of directors, I highly recommend it. Now, one last thing, the Man Up Tribe is what it's called. Man Up Board of Directors. And the reason that it's called Man Up and not Dad Up is because I actually have one board member on my team that is not a dad. And I didn't think it was fair to him to call my board of directors Dad Up Tribe because he's not a dad. And so I wanted to keep it as genuine as possible for all of the board members. And that's why I came up with Man Up Tribe.
There you go. And I'm blessed to be part of that board of directors.
No, I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
Well, you know what? I think all of us are, because during one of those conversations, it's co-creative. It's it's not one like Bryan receiving. We're just everyone's giving, receiving, adding value to each other wherever it's needed to be. So it's a great idea. And one of the things that comes up a lot during our conversations on the Dad Central show is we suggest dads and fathers to reach out and form communities. And Bryan has been doing it for 2 years. And I don't want to steal his thunder, but he's benefiting from it in a positive way.
Right. No, absolutely. I was telling Drew before we got started here that, my studio wouldn't have been set up if I didn't have a personal board of directors, because before I was filming my show at my dining room table and I kept telling my board, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. And they were laying it on. Thick.
Yes, they were.
Not only in our board meetings.
I'm not going to get names of individuals, but there were 2 or 3 that were really laying it on.
No, not only in our board meetings, but also, via back channel on our Instagram DM.
Yep.
I have a board of directors back channel, and they were laying it on thick as to what I needed to do and quit wasting time. And they were laying it on thick. And because of that pushing, and the guidance I got from them, I got the studio up and running. They've helped me in many. Now I'm working on my health. It's one of the things that I've been focusing on the last month and a half is really trying to dive into getting my health back under my health, my fitness, all back under control, because I had a while there that my blood pressure was dangerously high. And it was time for me to get it in check. And they're my support system for that. So, and as you said, Dr. Vibe, it's not just about me. There's so much value that's being shared in this board of directors that everybody is gaining from. Everybody's learning from each other. So yes, I call them my personal board of directors, but these guys are all helping each other out. It's phenomenal. It's been great.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing about that, Bryan. In particular, I hear the power of community, which we've heard in some other conversations. Also, the power of accountability. They're laying it on thick was holding you accountable to things that you had already spoken out. And I think one of the challenges when you don't have community is the ability to actually move forward in the areas that are important in your life. You can just, it's okay. I'll take a break, or I won't move into this. And so it helps with other things that we've heard dads talk about, being very intentional. So you were very intentional in going out and finding these men, then bringing them into a role, and then asking them for what you needed from them and saying what you're going to give back to them. So I love the intentionality and the act of going out and getting a board of directors, and it's built that community and accountability that is helping out. It's there's a specific stat from, I think it's the American College of Training or something, that where, if you set a goal, that's great. But if you set a specific goal and then you have a person who's helping hold you accountable, the chance of success is like 95% higher than if you just set the goal by itself. Mm-hmm. And so the ability to actually move forward in your life is predicated upon that accountability, which you've intentionally built into it. So I think it's just so powerful. And the ability, I think there's so much that prevents men and dads from building real, authentic, open community that is intended to serve and support moving forward in life. And so I just really want to encourage anyone who's listening, how can you maybe take this idea and just start small? Maybe who's one person you can reach out to and say, hey, I kind of want to improve in this area, and then you can work together on that. So I just want to say it's a very powerful, very important principle, and I'm going to be taking some action on it after our conversation. So thank you so much for that, Bryan.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good stuff. Well, we always receive great knowledge from individuals like yourself that we have on the platform. So it's great. So we're going to wind it down pretty quick here, but I've got one or two last conversation pieces. One thing is, what has been your greatest challenge as a dad? Now, it may be different. You may answer this different now than you did 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, it is. One of the greatest challenges I think any dad faces is the shift from being an actual parent and raising your kids to being the guide or friend with your child when they get older, right? So we have kids when they're little, we're trying to raise them and teach them values and right from wrong and things like that. When they're older and functioning young men or women, then it's more of a shift into being the guide for them and giving them guidance and being friends with them. It's okay to be your child's friend. I'm a big advocate of that. I know many people say you shouldn't be your child's friend. I completely disagree. It's okay to be your child's friend. They may not like you when they're teenage years. They may not like you, but I promise you they'll come back to you when they're adults, young adults, and getting into that age. But making that shift from being an actual parent and teaching them values to being to providing guidance. Right now, my boys are older, and I know that they can handle things on their own. But when they ask me for advice or my opinion, I'll give them advice, and they can take it or leave it. If they don't take my advice, that's okay. That's okay, because they have the power and they can make the decision themselves. But at least I've given them the guidance and the advice based on my own experiences on what I think they should do. So I think that's been the biggest challenge. And I think that's a challenge any parent faces, is just making that shift, that mental shift from really providing the value and teaching them things to really being a guide for them and providing that guidance for them.
And we just want to end off with asking, what's the proudest moment you've had as a dad?
Oh man, so we don't have no time for that? Yeah, I mean, shoot, obviously we know that the day that they're born is one of our proudest moments, right? Is the day that our kids are born. Our life is, you can never explain to someone that's not a dad the feeling and the love you have the second you become a dad. You can never explain it to anybody that's not a dad. They just don't understand it. So that's probably my most proudest moment. But I have individual moments for each of my boys. My older son graduating for college, that's a proud moment. He's graduated from a 4-year university, and now he's working at very successful at a sales company and doing very well. That's a proud moment for me. For my younger son, he's transitioned obviously in high school, into college. But probably my proudest moment for him is being able to coach him on the high school team and winning a championship game. For the first time in the school's 100-year history, our team won the championship, and I was the coach and he was one of the players. So we both have big championship rings that we'll have forever. So that's a proud moment for me. And two of those are two moments that just really stick out to me. But I could go on, but you said we'd have no more time. So
well, that's very relevant. Go ahead, Ed.
No, go ahead, Drew, please.
Because what you just shared is what I think why we name the show Tools to Raise Confident and Successful Kids, because there's so much satisfaction that I think dads get from seeing their children overcome and become, with these confident and successful individuals. You just described a championship. You just described a graduation. You just described entering a successful company and doing quite well in the role, and doing it in a positive way, and still being in relationship with you, still being in relationship with others in real positive ways. And so that's, I think, the core of what we aim to help bring through this show is tools, practical insights, key things that a dad can take and say, hey, okay, I can do that. And then hopefully to see the type of results that you're seeing.
Absolutely.
Well, Bryan, want to say huge thanks for you taking time out of your dad schedule, your corporate schedule, your former coach schedule to join us. Something tells me you may dip your toe back into that again, but not just right now.
Yeah, no, not right now.
Okay.
Not right now. It's I'm good with the decision.
Before we let you go today, and for people who are watching this, his contact information is at the bottom of the screen. Two last things. Where can people get in touch with you, and any final words you have for our dads?
Yeah, I mean, they can reach out to me. The main place that I reach, talk with people is through Instagram. They can DM me, but they can reach out to my email address. I see all the emails that come through, so they can reach out there. But Instagram and email is probably the two best places. And then any last words? Hey, being a dad, it can be tough, but it's not hard. It can be tough, but it's not hard. All right. You're going to go through challenges. You're going to face things in your life as a dad, and just know that everything's going to be okay. Just be there for your kids.
I love that. Great last word. So you can catch him Instagram, Dad Up Podcast, email address, the daduptrial@gmail.com. Bryan, thank you so much for everything you have done, are doing, and will be doing for fathers and families all around the world. And hopefully we may be on your show one of these days.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much for having me. It's been an honor, and I am truly grateful and blessed.
Well, thank you so much, Bryan.
Have a great day. Mr. Drew.
Yes, sir.
Another great epic conversation.
Yeah, I just love talking with other dads or men who are in this area, and just hearing their approaches, hearing what they do differently. One of the things that really stands out to me from Bryan is the power of community. That board of directors was
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. I knew that stuck.
Yeah, and it ties into something that Jack Armstrong shared about, he was doing that almost informally, going out and seeking out older, wiser people as mentors for himself, and the power that brought. And so, Bryan's was more structured, even more intentional. And so I think that's really powerful. And it's one of the things that here at Dad Central, we want to harness that power of community. We want to create and support communities of dads coming together and growing together and influencing positively their children and their families, and ultimately themselves as well. Because look at the impact it's having in Bryan's example of what it's doing for him, for his health, for his well-being, for his accountability to move forward in the things that he wants to move. And so we're really excited about possibly seeing something from Dad Central that's going to help support that idea of community. And so it's great to have a perfect example in what Bryan shared today.
Well, I'm just going to rubber stamp everything you said, and we are doing it. We are doing it with this conversation and everything we do, activities with fathers and those who love them. So I think the board of directors thing is an incredible idea. I'm very honored to be part of one, and it's caused me to start my own little small one myself. So you can see the power of manhood when men work with each other. When men work together, they can win together. And that's the same thing. When dads work together, they can win together. So as we close off, as always, let's remind the Dad Central Show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes care is the best of the man. And because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So one last thing, contact information for us, email is podcast@dadcentral.ca, website, dadcentral.ca, and more people are visiting, so keep on doing it. And also, if you want to check out the show, dadcentral.ca/, and please subscribe and please leave a review. We'd appreciate that. And if you want to get in touch with us, if you have any fathers that you feel we should be having on the platform, please do that. Looking forward to it. Thanks for listening or watching another great conversation. Remember to give yourselves grace. And dads and fathers out there, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Take care, be well, and keep the faith.